Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. All right, it sounds like we're listening to some music again. Yay. Welcome to episode 99 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 99. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your murdery. Wow, we're at episode 99.
99.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we've done 99 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? Look at us. 99 weeks.
Well, Zig, I'll let you take over on the nerdery side of the house with part 2 of DFW Indies.
Nice. Today we're talking about the local music scene in DFW. So if you listen to episode 98,
which we hope you did,
we hope you did. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out there. Matter of fact, go listen to the music now. We'll wait. Okay, you're back. So we were talking about, and as we've talked about in the past, different sections of the country had different indie music sounds. So I want to start doing episodes on those regional sounds. So I figured I'd start with our regional sound, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area, DFW. The first episode was 10 bands, mostly from the Fort Worth, Tarrant County side. This is going to be from another 10 bands were more Dallas/Denton oriented. Denton is a city that is just north of Dallas and Fort Worth. It is where the University of North Texas is. So there was a burgeoning indie sound or indie music scene there up until about 2000. It has come back in the last few years, both in Dallas, in Denton, and in Fort Worth. One of the reasons why it went away is the city of Denton kind of eminent domain, the little music area that was in the Denton scene. It was a little place called Fry Street.
Yeah.
But that indie music scene has kind of moved and more towards the square, the town square of Denton. So it's more of a sort of an indie kind of place now in the Denton Square, which is awesome. And not too far from where Geoffrey is.
Mm-hmm.
They've got probably the best used bookstore I have ever seen.
Yeah, the Opera House.
Yes. Also has a lot of good indie music and a lot of good records. So it's something you guys should check out if you're ever in the city of Denton. Plus, there's 2 colleges there. There's Texas Women's University and the University of North Texas. Both not very far from downtown Denton. And each has a burgeoning arts and music scene there, as well as Dallas and Fort Worth. So before we get started on the music list, I want to talk about someone who sort of championed the indie music scene here. It was a gentleman by the name of George Douglas Gamarek. So on June 30th, 1989, Ed Wodka bought the station KZRK, Z-Rock, and changed the call letters to KDGE and adjusted the format to alternative rock and rebranded the station as 94.5 The Edge. The first song on The Edge was Do You Remember Rock and Roll by the Ramones. Bonneville International bought the station in late 1994, while Evergreen Media would purchase it in 1996. Evergreen would merge with Chancellor Media in 1998, and Chancellor would look to improve 94.5's ERP at 7,800 watts. Part of the station's signal woes were solved when KDGE relocated its transmitter to its current location and increased its power to 98,000 watts. While all that was going on, a gentleman named George Douglas Gamarek, it was basically doing some other stuff around the city. He was born in 1957. He's an American disc jockey, record and radio program producer, and an author based in Texas, and is currently in the Texas Radio Hall of Fame. He is known for his extensive and authoritative knowledge about the classic rock radio format, recorded music in general, and specifically the era of punk and alternative rock. His broadcast programs have been heard in various formats in the U.S., Canada, Europe, and New Zealand via licensed station and unlicensed pirate radio transmitters. George Gamarek began his career as an intern at WRRAM in Dallas in April of 1975. He worked as a college disc jockey at the University of North Texas radio station, KNTU. You got to be careful how you say that.
Mm-hmm.
In the spring of 1977, he started a new weekly show called Punk and New Wave, which eventually became known as the Rock and Roll Alternative. And it moved to a commercial radio station, KZEW FM in Dallas, or the Zoo, 97.9. We used to refer to it as 98 KZEW. It was an album-oriented rock station and probably one of the last ones in America at the time. Well, not when it went on the air, but when it went off the air in, about 2005?
Mm-hmm.
The Zoo went out? Yeah. So yeah, it made its debut on May 18th, 1980, and was one of the first regular new wave or punk radio stations in the United States. K-Rock in LA was basically playing heavy metal and didn't really become a punk and new wave station until about 1981 or 82, and still was sort of half metal, half punk and new wave to this day. There was a Long Island radio station that was real big in this, but it didn't start broadcasting punk and new wave till about 1982. So KZEW was the first commercial station broadcasting this, but it was only on that one show for 2 hours on, I want to say Saturday night, maybe Sunday night. It was after the Dr. Demento show.
That would have been Sunday nights.
Yeah. The rock and roll alternative program was responsible for introducing acts such as REM, the Go-Go's, U2, the Psychedelic Furs, the Sex Pistols, Devo, the B-52s, XTC, the Smiths, the Cult, and hundreds of others to the listening audience in Dallas and Fort Worth Metroplex from 1977 onwards. It went through 3 different theme songs, but its most familiar was the one provided by new friends of the radio station, the Bangles, when they recorded their first album. The rock and roll alternative program moved to commercial radio again in May of 1988, but continued for 14 years until it was retired. So they actually ran it after George Gomaric left. George Gomaric then, after doing this for a long time, he even started other formats for KZPS in Dallas, also another AOR station called Backpages. But in June of 1989, Gomaric was the first official hire of the new station, KDGE, which we mentioned earlier. He was a DJ and the program director. So they they bought the station in late May of 1989 and hired George Gomaric June 1st of 1989. And that thing went on the air about July of 1989. That's about right. Cause you could hear it that summer. It was kind of hard to get. And then of course they moved their transmitter, so it was easier to get after about 1990. George developed a new commercial alternative format along with Wendy Naylor. And he was on the air daily in the afternoons and served as the program director, as well as doing R&R alternative for another year. So he and several other key members of the staff were shown the door in 1993 when the station decided to take a more mainstream approach to music and were no longer keen on breaking new acts. So one of the things he did was he held a concert for local bands called Edgefest. They continued to do that, and they would bring people in, big bands in from national acts or international acts. But he would then release an album every year called Tales from the Edge. Some of the songs that I have procured in our YouTube playlist are actually from the Tales of the Edge recordings, because in some cases it's the only recordings we still have of these bands. He released 10 of them, or they released 10 of them, even after George Gomaric left. The first 2 they released in the first year, both in 1990. And then they released them annually after that. So you get a lot of really, really great stuff. Notable artists featured on those early CDs are Course of Empire, Reverend Horton Heat, Deep Blue Something, Tripping Daisy, Sister Seven, which was actually originally known as Little Sister, and Poi Dog Pondering. And every year they would sell between 50 and 100,000 copies. And they were priced really cheap because you would get 10 to 12 songs on each one of those albums, and it was all really, really great stuff. They'd go in and record them actually in the radio station. So having said all that, I want to talk about the next 10 songs. They are Sarah Hickman's Equal Scary People. Sarah Hickman was born in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and both of her parents were artists. And Sarah moved with her mom to Houston, Texas, where she attended the High School for Performing and Visual Arts as a vocal major. In 1986, she graduated from North Texas State University, now University of North Texas, with a BA in painting, and she moved to Dallas, where she became a recording artist and music entertainer. Then in 1995, she moved to Austin, Texas. Again, it's a very common story around here. Her first album was released in 1988 on Four Dots Records. It was re-released in 1989 by Elektra Records. It is Equal Scary People. Now, I'll say this. This song is very, very folky. This is a folk song with a nice drum beat behind it. It's at first glance, it doesn't sound like the rest of the sound, but if you listen to the song, you can kind of hear where the bridge of that folk music and that southern sort of bluegrass and that sound of psychedelia come in. But it's real muted. You really kind of have to listen to it. And it was really, really popular early on in the Edge as well as on 90.1, which is a radio station that belongs to KERA, our local PBS station, because they used to do music. Now they're a talk show format. But back then they would do a whole bunch of local music. One of the ways to get a lot of this music out too was a little album that they did called Tales from 1990 or Tales from 90.1, which broke a lot of these things, and you'll see that as well. I have listed the IMDb section for that. Again, it's got a lot of the local flavor, including the reggae band that we talked about, Leroy Shakespeare. Just stuff you don't hear very often. But yeah, Sarah Hickman was one of those ones that just kind of stuck in my head. But she got real big with that Equal Scary People record, and then she stayed on the folk circuit for the rest of her time. She didn't really break. She broke nationally, but it was sort of a one-hit wonder nationally. She's still producing music, and it's all really, really good. But Equal Scary People was kind of her big claim to fame. The next song in our list is Trio of One, Poor Man's Honeymoon. Alternative rock band from Fort Worth, Texas. The band released several cassettes in the early 1990s, including Breathing, Beginning is Half Done, and Lovelessness. Members included the aforementioned Ezra Boggs, which we talked about in the previous episode, Paul Averett, John Thomason, Sean Phillips, and Eric Korb. Some of those guys went on to form Quick Serve Johnny as well. So Poor Man's Honeymoon is a really nice track from Trio of One. I would have rather gotten The Time, which I think is a really, really beautiful song, but there's not really a good clean copy of it. I can find some live recordings where you can hear it and it's good, but it's not really clear. So I went ahead and took the idea of using Poor Man's Honeymoon. Trio of One, these guys used to play everywhere. Church halls, the Hop, Mad Hatters. I think I saw them playing on a street corner once. You know, they play anywhere that would let them. And then they were selling these cassettes, and I want to say these cassettes sold like hotcakes. And then there was a point where they were going to sign with a local record company, and then they couldn't agree on what they were going to release on the album. So the band basically split up. It was at this point that Ezra went on to form Tabula Rasa. I think Paul Averett and John Thomason also went to school about this time because they were in high school when they started. But I could be wrong about that. Most of this is local lore because these guys were really, really popular locally on the west side of Fort Worth during the 1989 to 1992 period. But these guys were really, really wonderful. Again, that folky sound, but also a really nice guitar sound. Really, really beautiful. It's a shame that more of their stuff is not readily available. I have heard that they're planning on releasing some compilations along with some Tabula Rasa stuff. just to get it out there so people can hear it so it doesn't go away. But this particular one is on one of those Tales of the Edge recordings, so it is saved for posterity. The next band I want to talk about is Quick Serve Johnny with the Only One Thing Only One Thing Matters. I don't know why that's so hard to say.
Only one thing matters.
Only One Thing Matters. Yeah. This is a great tune. Quick Serve Johnny was a little more rocky, but again, they did have a violin player. So, they released this album, Beauty Knows No Pain, on Rainmaker Records in 1995. And this song, or this album, made its rounds all over the indie scene all over the country. So this album is actually pretty big for being an indie record. They're a power pop band, so you got a lot of that power pop sound to them. Again, I think they're from, the singer is from Fort Worth, but the rest of them are from Dallas. But yeah, this is one of those ones that just, I don't know why this didn't get played on regular radio, because it got released in 1995. That's when they were playing indie music on regular radio. It wasn't just on the Edge or KNON. You were hearing it on regular rock stations. This one just didn't make it for one reason or another. And I don't know why. It was as good as anything coming out by, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, all that stuff. It fits in like a glove, It's as good as Candlebox, not to diss Candlebox. They're fine, but I don't know why this one didn't make it. It just, for one reason or another, it didn't. Maybe it was because Rainmaker didn't have great distribution. I know they eventually got bought out, I want to say by Sony, but I could be wrong about that. But yeah, this is just a really nice. Are you familiar with Quick Serve Johnny at all?
No, not at all.
You know where their name comes from, right?
No.
Okay, you ever go to a drive-through window?
Mm-hmm.
And they lean against that little button and that window opens?
Yeah.
Underneath that little window, there is there's a thing that says Quick Serve. It's
yeah.
Yeah, it's the name of the company that makes those windows.
Yeah.
And that guy used to stop in at the 7-Eleven on Camp Bowie that I used to work in part-time. And I grabbed him and asked him, I was like, okay, why? He's like, well, it's the Quick Serve. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, when you go through the drive-thrus at Taco Bell, it's Quick Serve. And one of the guys that used to hang out there or service our tacos was a guy named Johnny. So we named the band after him.
That's funny.
Yeah. Quick Serve Johnny. The next band is Adam's Farm, and the name of the song is It's a Shame About the Lemonheads. Adam's Farm was an indie rock band from the Dallas Denton area. Again, that sort of Fry Street area. Adam's Farm broke up in 1996, but played some reunion shows after that. They released 2 albums on Rainmaker Records, Rock Machine Music and Super Electric. I believe It's a Shame About the Lemonheads is from Rock Machine Music. Again, power pop band, real talented. What they were doing with this song was, it was their take on It's a Shame About Ray by the Lemonheads. They basically used very similar chord progressions. So they don't diss the Lemonheads at all. It's just they wanted to use that chord progression and then made a different song about it. So the title of the song has nothing to do with the rest of the song, but it's a really, really great song. And if you like the Lemonheads, you're going to love these guys because it's a real similar sound. I want to say they were doing some touring with them, and this song may have been more of an homage than a diss, but on face value, it sounds like they're dissing them. They're not. The next song is by Twist of Fate, called Life on My Own. Twist of Fate was a more of an electronic band. Like, they wanted to get some electronic sounds, influenced pretty heavily by Peter Gabriel. And I want to say Twist of Fate was a fairly heavy influence on Blue October. You know what I mean? Like, when first time I heard Blue October, I was like, oh man, these guys really, really love Peter Gabriel. I can tell. I think they also listened to Twist of Fate. Problem with Twist of Fate is there's not a lot of stuff out there. Again, this is one of those songs that I got. I don't remember if I listed it off the Edge or the 90.1 compilation. It's on one of those. Actually, I think it's on both of them. But it was Tolbert Pittman on the bass. Keyboards and drum programming was Darby Orr, and the singer and the songwriter was also Darby Orr. But again, this is more of an electronic sound. I think you'll really dig Twist of Fate if you haven't heard them before. This is the stuff that's right up your alley. So you really want to check that out. I'm sorry I don't have a lot more on Twist of Fate. They didn't last very long. Even though it was just two guys, they lasted for 3 or 4 years and then they just kind of went away. The next band is Dizzy Spinning Poets, Rainy Day at Neil's. It is on Tales from the Edge Volume 2. They're an alternative rock band from Dallas, Texas, active in the 1990s. Dizzy Spinning Poets featured the following members: Eric Presswood, guitars, vocal, and banjo; Mitch Hauser on bass and vocals; and Chris Holton on drums and percussions. I included Rainy Day at Neil's because I can't find a good copy of Godzilla Rocks. Dizzy Spinning Poets were huge in the indie scene. Like the Judys were really huge in the indie scene, but they weren't huge anywhere else. They were a purely Dallas band or a DFW band. Really, really, heavily psychedelic, but a good solid rock band. And then they would bust out with a banjo every once in a while. Just crazy. And they were nuts. And, they were Dizzy Spinning Poets. But again, not a lot. I don't think they released an album. They are just on different compilations. But they're one of the ones that really, if you're going to get out there and find some stuff that's sort of obscure, I'd start with these guys. And I don't know why they were obscure. Maybe it was self-imposed, but they're really, really good and goofy, kind of like They Might Be Giants or Goofy. Dizzy Spinning Poets is basically our version of They Might Be Giants or the Dead Milkmen. Yeah, really, really great guys. They used to be on the Edge and KONN a lot. They just come in and do interviews, just because they like to be part of the scene. But yeah, that's Dizzy Spinning Poets. If you could find some other stuff by them, get out there and find it. If they did produce an album, I don't know anything about it, and I would love some more information. I looked, scoured. All I could find was stuff on different compilations, but there's 2 or 3 things out there. Plus, there are some YouTube recordings of their live shows. Again, Godzilla Rocks. That's a live recording of Godzilla Rocks. I don't know if they recorded it anywhere else but there. The next band they were kind of a big band. I want to talk about the Nubos. The official name of the band is Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians.
Okay.
That is not what they were called back home. Here, they are referred to as the Nubos.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about Mesopotamia, which is a cover of a B-52 song. The New Bohemians started as a 3-piece band in the early 1980s, gaining experience in the Deep Ellum neighborhood of downtown Dallas. The original lineup featured Brad Hauser on vibraslap, Eric Presswood on guitars. Again, Eric Presswood from Dizzy Spinning Poets.
Mm-hmm.
And Brandon Alley on drums. Drummer Alley, guitarist Kenny Withrow, and percussionist John Burst went to the same Arts Magnet High School in Dallas, the Booker T. Washington High School of the Performing and Visual Arts, where they met singer Edie Brickell. The others didn't know her until a little bit later. And according to Hauser, Edie was there for art. Hauser attended Hillcrest High School and lived in the same neighborhood as the others. He played in various neighborhood bands like the Knobs, which included Kenny Withrow, who was also in the band Munch Puppies. The additional core members joined in 1985. Edie became the singer after being encouraged to join the band on stage during a show because the singer left. They were like, "Oh crap. Hey, Edie, get up here and sing the song." And it was soon after that first show that the local agent who was booking bands at Rick's Casablanca, another major local hangout, which no longer exists, was brought to hear the band. The band signed a 6 months management contract, which brought with it better playing gigs at Rick's. When the 6 months ended, they started regular gigging in Deep Ellum proper. Presswood left and started Dizzy Spinning Poets. And Kenny Withrow joined as guitarist, playing his first show in July of 1985 at the Start Club in Dallas, which was a big club. John Bush joined on percussions in September of that year. His first show with the band was September 12th, 1985 at Poor David's Pub in Dallas, when the band was backing Bo Diddley. Poor David's is still around. The New Bows, which is what they refer to here, were a local favorite, packing in the fans at the now famous Deep Ellum venues such as Theater Gallery, 500 Cafe, and Club Dada. They were also regular performers at the annual Fry Street Fair at the University of North Texas. And during the period of the band's history, Edie's name was not used in the band's name. They were still going by the New Bohemians. So they signed to get this. They recorded Shooting Rubber Bands at the Stars, which was their big major label debut, under a local record company who had a distribution deal with a major record label. The major record label took the record New Bows or New Bohemians, Shooting Rubber Bands at the Stars, and changed the title of the album to Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians, Shooting Rubber Bands at the Stars, and released it nationwide. At this point, they got a lot of flack locally as quote unquote selling out. However, nobody in the band or their management or their local record company made that decision. Yeah, I know. It's crazy, right? I'm surprised somebody didn't get sued over it. But at the same time, that song also went into the top that album went into the top 200. It became part of the zeitgeist of American indie music in the late 80s and early 90s. So they, hey, you changed the name of our band when you released this record. You can't do that. And then they hand him a big pile of money. It's kind of hard to go, well, okay, I'm still mad about this. You're holding this big pile of money going, well, okay, I feel better about it. But yeah, it was a record company that changed the band's name without even telling them.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know. It's nuts. But yeah, this particular recording that I included was that 90.1. No. This is from A Tales from the Edge. And it's a cover of the B-52's Mesopotamia, recorded under the name New Bohemians, or as we refer to them, the New Bows. It's a lot more like what they sounded like, because if you heard that album, Shooting Rubber Bands at the Stars, you kind of only got about 50% of what they sounded like, with the drippy guitars and everything. They really cleaned a lot of their stuff up and took stuff off of it. It was awful. But again, it's awful hard to get mad about something when they hand you a giant pile. And it did. That album sold and sold and sold. It sold all over the world. They got paid for it. They would use that single Circle in movies and stuff like 10, 12 years out. And they would send the New Bows checks. It's hard to argue with that in the aftermath. But it did cause some contention with the band later on. And they split up after a couple of albums. Now they still get back together every once in a while when Edie's in Dallas and play shows. They play at little local spots. And they announce it like the day before, and then you can go and see them. And that folk psychedelic sound that they kind of pioneered. But that's about it for Mesopotamia, other than get out and check it out. The next band in the list is Little Sister and the song Forgiven. Now, when you go to buy this particular piece of music now, the band is no longer called Little Sister. They're called Sister Seven. All of the original pressings of this were titled Little Sister. All the subsequent pressings of it are called Sister Seven. And it's because when the band moved to Austin, there was already a band in Austin called Little Sister, so they had to change their name. But Little Sister was started by Patrice Pike. Originally met guitarist Wayne Sutton when they were in high school students in Dallas, Texas. The two formed a band and began writing and rehearsing in 1991. They both opted to forego college to concentrate on music in Pike's freshman year. They were originally called Little Sister, and the band played Dallas at venues such as Club Dada, and they would eventually relocate to Austin, where the group quickly moved from being an opening band into a headlining role. The band remained popular in Austin for many, many years. It was when they moved to Austin that they changed their name to Sister Seven. There was a Boston-based cover band threatening to bar them from playing at the state of Massachusetts unless the Texas band paid them $40,000. The band decided to change its name to Sister Seven. There were 6 other bands in the Austin area called Little Sister as well. The members also didn't want legal threats similar to those promised by the Boston group because it was in negotiations with Arista Records while they were in Austin. And Arista Records re-released all of their stuff. The band did release 2 further full-length studio albums under the name Sister Seven. Know What You Mean, which reached number 21 in the adult top 40 charts and 76 on the Billboard Hot 100. The group disbanded for 2 years in 2001. In that same year, the band re-released its debut album as well as a live album. Pike and Sutton still perform and tour as a duo. They and original bassist Daryl Phillips periodically perform in Austin under the name Sister Seven. So they're still up and running. Forgiven is off the self-titled Little Sister album released in 1995, which was, again, retitled in later pressings to Sister Seven. There's also a live album called Free Love and Nickel Beer and an original album from 1992 called Freedom Child. Free Love and Nickel Beer is my favorite name for a live album. The idea is, what is heaven? Oh my God. Heaven would be free love and nickel beer and a shitload of nickels. So, but yeah, Forgiven by Little Sister. I even included Forgiven on a couple of TikToks just because it's such a great tune. And Patrice Pike just wails. She was on a vocal competitions show, like the show where she was going to join NXS.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was one of the people on that. I think the problem with Little Sister, when they moved from Dallas to Austin and they had to change their name, I think they lost some of their following just because they didn't know they changed their name. Little Sister was huge around here, especially up around Denton. But again, they ran into the same problem. When the city of Denton decided to eminent domain the area around Fry Street, and, they put up a health center and some other stuff. I understand why they did it. But it kind of killed that music scene up there for a few years, as well as stopping the Fry Street Fair, which was an institution in and around North Texas. Again, understand why they did it. Fry Street Fair was a groovy little thing for a lot of years. And then in 1997, some local band, and I don't remember which band it was, broke real big right before the fair was going on. So every little indie kid in Texas descended on tiny little Denton, Texas for a weekend. And it was chaos. I want to say it was like 1997 or 1998, but they stopped doing the Fry Street Fair shortly after that because it was absolute and utter chaos. They started doing a jazz festival a couple of years later, which is kind of what they do now. But yeah, the Fry Street Fair, it got out of hand that year. I don't think anybody necessarily got hurt, but it was a problem. Like the city was left with a much larger cleanup bill than they were ready for, if that makes sense. Because, Fry Street Fair would get over the weekend, you'd get, 5,000-10,000 people normally. Well, this year they got like 50. So they weren't equipped to handle it. So they kind of canceled it, which unfortunately had the horrible effect of killing the local music scene in Denton.
Right.
And it kind of died out for a few years. So, I feel for the city. I don't think that the city of Denton necessarily did anything wrong, but I think they could have handled it a little bit better, because I think they lost something when they lost that. Now they're doing more music festivals there now, but they also have the facilities to do them now, especially with North Texas building stadiums and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well as, well, I don't say Texas Women's. I don't think they built a stadium, but they did build a large park
Mm-hmm.
right off the Texas Women's campus in the last 10 or 20 years. Plus, they've kind of restructured the area around City Hall in Denton, with all the nice little shops where they can do stuff like that a little bit better. Whereas they just weren't ready for 50,000 people to descend on that city for a weekend, on top of all the college kids who were already there. It was nuts. Which brings me to my next band, a band that is still in the area. They are still in Denton, Texas. That's Bowling for Soup.
Okay.
Bowling for Soup is an American rock band that originally formed in Wichita Falls, Texas.
Oh,
yeah,
in
1994. Yeah, the band consists of Jarrett Reddick, Chris Burney, Gary Weissman, Rob Filicetti, and the band is known for its singles "The Girl All the Bad Guys Want," 1985, "Almost," and "High School Never Ends." The band is also known for performing the introduction to the Disney Channel TV show Phineas and Ferb and the vocal theme for Sonic Unleashed. And again, Bowling for Soup had its origins in Wichita Falls, Texas, where Jarrett Reddick and other members of the band grew up. Reddick and the original drummer Lance Morrell met in the fall of 1976. Then reconnected in kindergarten in the fall of 1977. So these guys are basically our age. Reddick began playing music in 1985 at 13 years old. Reddick and guitarist Chris Burney each knew each other in high school. They met in 86. And as students in the 80s, they grew up on commercially successful heavy metal music in bands such as Quiet Riot, Rat, and Motley Crue. They were also influenced by the faster punk rock of the Ramones and later Green Day. Probably a little bit of Operation Ivy too. We will talk about Operation Ivy. They're not a DFW band. They're out of the East Bay and San Francisco, Oakland area, Berkeley, California. That will probably be the next indie scene I talk about. Bernie's family owned a Wichita Falls coffee house called The Refuge, with a music stage, and he played there with his first band, The Persecuted. And in the early 1990s, they hooked up with Gary Weissman, who kind of helped them out. He didn't play with them until 1998, but he kind of was their number one fan, as it were. Bernie and Chandler soon formed the Polka Dots, and they played a lot around the Wichita Falls area and coming into Denton, playing such venues as The Refuge. And a few months later, after forming a band called Rubberneck, the group changed their name to Bowling for Soup, because the the next album I'm going to talk about, the Toadies released a national album called Rubberneck. So they changed their name to Bowling for Soup, which was derived from a comedy act by Steve Martin. And the band was officially formed in Wichita Falls on June 4th, 1994. And in 1996, Bowling for Soup relocated to Denton. And in 1998, recorded their second studio album and third overall, Rock On Honorable Ones, on the Denton label FFROE, which is Jeff Rowe's album. And the song I put in here is called Scope, about the mouthwash. Again, Bowling for Soup, they're kind of funny, kind of crazy, but they're one of the few bands from the area that stuck around. Probably because they already moved. They moved from Wichita Falls to Denton, and they were doing okay. They're a national act now. Bowling for Soup plays everywhere, so they can afford to live in Denton without having to relocate down to Austin, where it's a little easier for musicians to make money, because you can't go to sections of Austin and throw a tennis ball without hitting a club that has a live music band playing in it. It's like every other building. So I understand why a lot of them left, but these guys decided to stick around. And this is one of those, high energy, ska punk kind of songs. It's not as polished as their later stuff, but Scope is a really, really awesome song. If you haven't heard Rock On Honorable Ones by these guys before they kind of got cleaned up by commercial radio, you should, because it's really, really fun. It's fun. It's got a lot of great pumpy sounds. There's still some horns in it. It's just beautiful. And for my next song in the list, it is Possum Kingdom by the Toadies. Toadies were a Fort Worth band. They formed in 1999 in Fort Worth, Texas. There was a Peaches record store on Camp Bowie Boulevard, which got bought out by a local, I say local, it's more regional, a regional music purveyor called Sound Warehouse. I want to say Sound Warehouse originally was out of Oklahoma, believe it or not, Oklahoma and Arkansas. The members of the Toadies, when they first formed, all worked at that Sound Warehouse. They worked at that Sound Warehouse up until they released Rubberneck. So they were playing gigs, larger and larger gigs. They released their own album, and still you could go in and get a recommendation from them for a record. I want to say it was Lisa Umbarger, the original bassist, who sold me or convinced me to buy Big Lizard in My Backyard by the Dead Milkmen. If she wasn't the one who put it in my hands, she was the one that says, "Oh yeah, you're really going to love that." They formed in, again, 1989. The band's classic lineup consisted of Vaden, Todd Lewis, Lisa Umbarger, Daryl Herbert, and Mark Resnick. Now, I went to high school with Lisa's younger brother and younger sister. Matter of fact, her younger sister and I were in the same graduating class. I want to say Mark, Daryl, and Todd all went to Arlington Heights. And the only reason the Umbargers went to Western Hills is because they were on the wrong side of Southwest Boulevard. Because, if depending on what side of the Southwest Boulevard you were, where it comes off a traffic circle,
right,
you either went to Arlington Heights or you went to Western Hills.
Right.
Because both schools are, basically equally distant from that area. So they disbanded in 2001 after Lisa left the group. The band reformed and released the album No Deliverance in 2008. And in 2010, they re-released the album Feeler with Kirtland Records. The album's original release was had also been denied by Interscope in 1997. The band's most recent album, The Lower Side of Uptown, was released in September of 2017. Now, the song I wanted to include was Possum Kingdom. There are two versions of this song. One is on Pleather, which was a local release, which is 11 minutes and 45 seconds. It's really, really cool. But the other one is on Rubbernecker, which was released in 1994 on Interscope, which is a lot shorter. Now, having said all this, I know how cool Lisa Umberger is. I know how cool Todd Vaden is, and the rest of the band, Mark Resnick and Daryl Herbert. They were great record store guys. I love them in big open venues. I'd like to borrow the Podback machine if I may. Okay, so we're going to step into the Podback machine. We're going to go back to about 1991, 1992, before this band blows up. We're going to go down to this little tiny club in the hospital district called Mad Hatters, right? You can get maybe 25 people in there comfortably. I've seen it where it was packed to almost 100. You know, the walls were sweating, you know? You park a couple of blocks up because the parking around there is not really, how do I put it? Safe. Like if you parked in their parking lot, your car's probably going to get broken into. So you parked a couple blocks up, right? And you walk down. So I can remember being with a buddy. We're walking down and we had heard that Mad Hatters was doing a jazz night, right? So we wanted to go hear some jazz music, right? So we're walking, we're about 2 blocks away. And as we get up, we hear, na-na, na-na, na-na. Door's closed. The door of the club is closed. The club is about a block and a half away, and I can hear it as loudly as if I were in the room.
Wow.
Yeah. I walk up, keep walking. I notice a guy urinating all over a car as I'm walking into the door, just laughing, right? Bouncing up and down because that's what you did at a Toady show. You bounced up and down listening to Possum Kingdom. Open the door, start to hand the door guy my money to walk in, and he just waves me on. So I had to wait for somebody to come out so I could walk in. Paid the cover, whatever it was. It's like $5-10. Paid the little cover, and I start to make my way back to the bar. They didn't have a liquor license then. I just wanted to get something to drink. You know, they had smart drinks, which was a big thing back in the early 90s. Basically herb tea. So I'm walking back. I can't get back to the bar because it's packed and everybody's bouncing up and down. And granted, I could hear this song a block and a half away. I never make it back to I have no idea what happened to my friend. I don't even remember who it was I was going with, but just lost him. I can't make it. So I eventually make it back to the front door and walk out where people are waiting to come in. I hated that song. Hated it with every fiber of my being because it was too loud in a small club. Unlike all the other bands I've mentioned who were perfectly fine in a small club. And it's not too loud because I was too old. I was 20 years old at the time. I've listened to way louder stuff, since then. But in that confined space with 100 people bouncing up and down where the walls are sweating, it was too much. So people would say the Toadies, I'm like, oh, they're terrible. I can't stand them. But then I heard them on the radio a little while later. And then I saw them at an outdoor event. They're incredible. Maybe I just caught them on a bad night. Maybe their stuff was turned up way too loud. Everybody else in that place was there to see them and vibe with them. Nothing against the band or those people, but I was not. I was there to hear some jazz. So I kind of gave them an unfair assessment because of that one evening. And again, I love their stuff. but I would be trepidatious about seeing them in a small venue to this day. That's how bad that was. Yeah, great band. Love this band. Love the 11-minute and 45-second version of Possum Kingdom. It's incredible. It's nuts. Rocked out. And Todd Lewis likes to tell stories in his song. Like Possum Kingdom, we always thought it was about a serial killer. No, it's about like a goat man of Possum Kingdom. So yeah, and for our listeners, Possum Kingdom is a lake to the northwest of DFW. It's a lake where back in the day, middle-class people would go, and they'd go for a weekend or for a week in the summer, rent a cabin and go boating and fishing and, cook weenies and all that stuff. So that's what the song is purportedly about a cryptid creature coming out and grabbing someone who's there for the weekend and basically burying them in Possum Kingdom. But that is about it for 20 indie bands from the DFW area.
Wow, that was a lot.
Yeah. Well, okay. I wanted to talk about the radio stations, and I want to talk about the record companies and this sound that's folky, but also psychedelic. And again, of all of the indie scenes, DFW is not my favorite. My favorite is the stuff coming out of Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
I like it way better. But I wanted to give a nice cross promotion, because from the most country western sounding song we've got to the reggae band, there is a certain sound that they all possess. It is almost indefinable. But if you listen to all of them, you can hear that sound. And I don't know what it is. It may go back to like the Nubos and the Bat Mastersons from the early 80s. The Dizzy Spinning Poets, those guys. But they all have that kind of weird, I guess, drippy guitar sound that it just permeates. So that is what our sound was classified for. I also wanted to document it because that sound went away when we started closing music venues in Deep Ellum and Fort Worth and Denton, basically all at the same time. A lot of these guys ended up having to move to Austin, which changed Austin's sound because they got a large influx of these people making that music. So now the Austin sound sounds like the DFW sound. It was completely different in the early 80s. It's weird, but it makes sense, because of that influx. So
Awesome. Thank
you for taking that long journey with me.
Awesome. No, thanks for doing all your research on that. That was great. Good stuff. Good stuff. I hope everybody takes a listen for that. All right. Then with that, we'll take over on the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information from the Canadian Encyclopedia, Crime and Investigation, and Wikipedia, and this is the story of Robert Pickton.
Robert Pickton.
Yes, sir. So between 1978 and 2001, at least 65 women disappeared from Vancouver's downtown east side. Robert Pickton, who operated a pig farm in nearby Port Coquitlam, was charged with murdering 26 of the women.
Never trust a man with a pig farm.
Right. He was eventually convicted on 6 charges and sentenced to life in prison. And in a jail cell conversation with an undercover police officer, Pickton claimed to have murdered 49 women.
Oh, my God.
The murders led to the largest serial killer investigation in Canadian history, and Pickton's farm became the largest crime scene in Canadian history. The case became a flashpoint in the wider issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada. In 2012, a provincial government inquiry into the case concluded that blatant failures by police, including inept criminal investigation work, compounded by police and societal prejudice against sex trade workers and Indigenous women, led to a tragedy of epic proportions.
Damn.
Robert William Willie Pickton, born in 1949, was raised on a family-operated pig farm in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. Pickton and his siblings sold most of the property for urban development, including the farm to 6.5 hectares, reducing the farm to 6.5 hectares. Pickton maintained a small-scale livestock operation at the farm. He also received a share of the proceeds from the real estate transactions and was a partner with his brother David in a salvage company. Pickton was a socially awkward man who was known to have exhibited strange behaviors, and he lived alone in a trailer home on the farm. In 1996, the Pickton brothers started the Piggy's Palace Good Times Society, and it was a federally registered charity with an alleged mandate to raise funds for service organizations through events such as dances and shows. Neighbors, however, complained of rowdiness, drug use, drunkenness, and noise. The parties were attended by as many as 1,700 people, including bikers and sex trade workers from the downtown east side. But in 2000, the city of Port Coquitlam shut Piggy's Palace down. Vancouver's downtown east side neighborhood is known for its high rates of poverty, homelessness, open drug use.
That sounds like a good time.
I don't know about that. Vancouver's downtown east side neighborhood is known for its high rates of poverty, homelessness, open drug use, and prostitution. And in the late 1990s, 80% of the girls and women working in the sex trade came from outside Vancouver. Some had not had contact with their family for many years. A survey of 183 sex trade workers conducted by the Prostitution Alternatives Counseling and Education Society between 1999 and 2001 revealed that acts of violence against these women were frequent. They were subjected to robberies, beatings, kidnapping, and forced confinement. The survey showed a gulf between acts of violence suffered and acts of violence reported, and the findings also indicated that the women had a profound distrust of police and other authorities. Pickton became familiar with the downtown east side through visits to a rendering plant located there where he would dispose of waste animal parts. He would cruise the 10-block strip called the Low Track and offer women money and drugs and often take them back to his farm. In 1978, a joint RMCP Vancouver Police Department Missing Women Task Force began compiling a list of missing women. The earliest case on the list connected to Pickton was that of Diana Melnick, last seen on December of 1995. Pickton was never convicted of Melnick's murder. The most recent case on the list connected to Pickton, and one of 6 murders for which he was convicted, was that of Mona Wilson, last seen in November of 2001. Of the 26 disappearances officially attributed to Pickton, 1 occurred in 1995, 1 in 96, 6 in 97, 4 in 1998, 5 in 1999, 2 in 2000, and 7 in 2001. Other disappearances before and during this period were not officially connected to Pickton due to lack of evidence. Because of the marginalized lifestyles and transient habits of victims and other people in downtown east side, disappearances often went unnoticed. The disappearance of Sherry Rail, who vanished in 1984, was not even reported for 3 years. In 1997, the RMCP set up a special team to investigate the unsolved murders and disappearances of sex trade workers, but it was disbanded in 1989 due to limited progress. Over the years, as the rate of disappearances escalated, rumors of a serial killer began to circulate in downtown east side. Sex trade workers began walking the Low Track in groups and writing down the license plate number of cars that numbers of cars that picked women up, but the disappearances continued. Large numbers of women started disappearing off the streets of Vancouver in the 1980s, but they were mainly prostitutes, drug addicts, or Aboriginal women who operated in the downtown east side, which was Canada's poorest postcode. I almost said Canada.
Canada?
I almost said that. With no public pressure and without any bodies to start a murder case, the police refused for years to treat the women as anything but missing, let alone connect them to becoming prey to a single predator. But then an Aboriginal group provided a list of missing women to the police, and Detective Dave Dixon officially started an investigation in 1998. The first Vancouver policeman to suspect a serial killer was Kim Rossmo. He would later become a criminology professor and originator of geographic profiling. He speculated that the killer was deliberately targeting women who would be invisible to authorities. But even when police realized they had a serial killer and that Pickton was a suspect, he was not placed under surveillance. I really don't know why.
Why?
Incompetence.
Yeah.
In 1991, the families of missing women, along with advocates for sex trade workers, established an annual Valentine's Day Remembrance Walk as a memorial to murdered and missing victims. They demanded a thorough investigation, but the police work was sluggish. The Vancouver police refused to say that a serial killer was at work or even consider that the missing women were dead. There were no bodies to warrant an investigation that would be a strain on police resources. And to police, it seemed reasonable to presume that the women had moved away and others had died from drug overdoses. There were complaints of police apathy, particularly from the Vancouver Sun newspaper. It accused the police of giving low priority to crimes committed against sex trade workers. And the Vancouver Police Department was also hampered by its reluctance to adopt newly emerging methods of investigation, such as psychological criminal profiling and geoprofiling. Many of the missing women were also Indigenous, and as the Pickton case unfolded with many Indigenous victims, it focused public attention on the wider issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada. This, in turn, led to a national government inquiry into the issue beginning in 2016. On March 22nd, 1997, a woman Pickton had taken to his farm fought back when he tried to handcuff her. She seized a kitchen knife and in the ensuing struggle received serious stab wounds. The woman ran to the road and waved down a car whose occupants called an ambulance. She was taken to the Royal Columbian Hospital in New Westminster. While this woman was undergoing emergency surgery, Pickton was receiving treatment for injuries in the same hospital. An orderly found a key in his pocket that fit the handcuffs to the woman's wrist, and Pickton was arrested and charged with attempted murder, assault with a weapon, and forcible confinement. The charges were stayed and eventually dropped because the woman, whose name was placed under protection of a public ban by the courts, was not considered a competent witness due to drug addiction, and Pickton claimed she was a hitchhiker who had attacked him.
Whoa. Okay. Okay. So this person is high. We can't take their statement. I understand that. The key fit the handcuffs.
Well, Pickton claimed she had attacked him, and he handcuffed her.
Okay. I'm with you.
I'm glad you are, because I'm not with the police at this point.
Oh, no. And I want to say we just did an episode where we gave full props to the RCMP.
Yes.
Not this time.
No. Well, and is it going to be more the RCMP or more the Vancouver Police Department at this point?
Yeah, that could be it. It sounds like Vancouver's just
right.
Mm-hmm.
So in the spring of 1999, an informant told the Vancouver police that a single mother and drug addict named Lynn Ellingson had seen a woman's body hanging in Pickton's slaughterhouse. When questioned by police, she initially denied the story. Only much later did she admit that on March 20th, she had actually, in fact, seen a body. She did not report it because she feared Pickton and depended on him for money for drugs. And additionally, she admitted that she blackmailed Pickton about the incident on more than one occasion. Early in 1999, Bill Hiscox, who worked for the Picktons, informed the RCMP that Lisa Yelds, a close friend of Pickton, had told Hiscox that she had seen women's clothing, purses, and identification papers at the pig farm. He believed that they were the property of the missing women. Police questioned Yelds, but she was uncooperative, and it was the second time that Hiscox had contacted police about his suspicions, but they could not obtain a search warrant based on hearsay evidence. They required an eyewitness report of criminal activity or the existence of physical evidence. In 2001, the Vancouver Police and the RCMP formed Project Even-Handed, a joint task force to investigate the missing women from the downtown east side. And in February of 2002, Scott Chubb, formerly employed by the Pickton family as a truck driver, informed the RCMP in Port Coquitlam that he had personally seen illegal guns on Pickton's trailer home. That information met the official requirement for a search warrant. So on February 5th, officers of the task force raided the pig farm. And in addition to several illegal and unregistered guns, they found items connected to the missing women on the property. Pickton was arrested only on weapons charges and then released on bail. And within hours of the 57-year-old being in custody, the police obtained a second court order to search the farm as part of the ongoing 20-year police investigation into the disappearance of over 60 women from downtown. He was kept under surveillance and was not permitted to return to the pig farm while police conducted a thorough search under the second warrant. Among the evidence they discovered were handcuffs, women's clothing and shoes, jewelry, and an asthma inhaler prescribed to Serena Abotsway, who was one of the missing women. DNA testing of blood in a motorhome on the property proved to be that of Mona Wilson. A few weeks later, the police arrested and charged Pickton with 2 counts of first-degree murder for the killings of Serena Abotsway and Mona Wilson. A fortnight later, the names of Heather Bottomley, Jacqueline McDonnell, and Diane Rock were added to the charges, and 1 week later, Andrea Joesbury became the 6th charge. With the addition of Heather Chinook, Tanya Holick, Sherry Irving, and Inga Hall, the total murder charges reached 15, making Pickton Canada's, I was about to say Canada again, Canada's biggest formally charged serial killer. By this stage, large conveyor belts were being used to sift through tons of soil as going as deep as 30 feet down for sifting and DNA analysis for over 100 forensic specialists, and it broke new grounds for forensics. They had blood-stained clothes and pieces of human bone and teeth. Amongst a pile of animal bones, human toes, heels, and rib bones were found. By November, there were nearly 30 charges against Pickton, but investigators were constantly thwarted by the conditions on the farm and the fact that Pickton's pigs had helped in the disposal of the evidence.
Absolutely. Pigs can eat every part of a person except for hair and teeth, I believe.
Yep. While Pickton was being held in jail in Surrey, British Columbia, he shared a cell with an undercover RMCP police officer that he believed to be another detainee. And in their conversation, Pickton said he had murdered 49 women and had wanted to make it 50. Meanwhile, the pig farm became the largest crime scene in Canadian history. Investigators took 200,000 DNA samples and seized 600,000 exhibits.
Wow!
Archaeologists and forensics experts needed heavy equipment to sift through the 383,000 cubic yards of soil in the search of human remains. The cost of the investigation was estimated at nearly $70 million.
They had to dig down so deep that they had to get an archaeologist.
Yep.
And 70 million Canadian.
Yep.
Wow. Seems like if they had this guy like 10 years earlier, they could have gone and saved themselves some trouble.
Yeah, probably. Pickton's preliminary hearing to decide if there was enough evidence for trial lasted from January to July 2003. Due to the unprecedented volume and complexity of legal issues that had to be litigated, his trial on the first 6 charges did not begin until January 22nd, 2007 in New Westminster. On December 9th, 2007, Pickton was found guilty by a jury on 6 counts of second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment in a federal penitentiary with no possibility of parole for 25 years, and this is the longest sentence possible under Canadian law. Justice James Williams said, quote, "Mr. Pickton, there is really nothing I can say to adequately express the revulsion the community feels about these killings." As the verdict was read, 2 female jurors wiped away tears while Pickton finally showed some emotion. He smirked. Those convictions were upheld by the Supreme Court of Canada in 2010. Although Pickton claimed to have murdered 49 women, he was only charged with the murder of 26 who could be identified with evidence found on the pig farm, plus one unidentified woman whose remains were also found who was given the name of Jane Doe. The Jane Doe charge was eventually dismissed by the court because of a lack of information about her identity and the time of her death. After Pickton was convicted of 6 charges in the initial trial, British Columbia Crown prosecutors kept open the possibility of trying Pickton on the other 20 charges at a later date. However, on August 4th, 2010, prosecutors announced they would not proceed on the 20 charges. They said a second trial, even if further convictions were achieved, would not add anything to Pickton's punishment, which was already the maximum possible under the law. The decision angered some of the families of the 20 victims, and others said they were relieved at being spared the experience of another long and difficult trial. In 2016, an autobiographical book titled Pickton in His Own Words, allegedly written by Pickton and smuggled out of prison, was published by Outskirts Press of Denver, Colorado. It was offered on sale for sale on Amazon, but was withdrawn due to public outrage. The publication and marketing of the book initiated controversy, critical petitions, and actions by the government to stop Pickton from profiting from the work. In 2010, a provincial government inquiry was established to examine the Pickton case and how it was handled by authorities. And in 2012, the Missing Women Commission of Inquiry issued its final report titled Forsaken. The inquiry said blatant failures by police, including inept criminal investigative work compounded by police and societal justice against prejudice against sex trade workers and indigenous women, led to a tragedy of epic proportions, as I said earlier. At a press conference, Deputy Chief Constable Doug Lepard of the VPD apologized to the victims' families, saying, quote, "I wish from the bottom of my heart that we could have caught him sooner. I wish that the several agencies involved that we could have done better in so many ways. I wish all the mistakes that were made we could undo, and I wish more lives would have been saved. So on my behalf and behalf of the Vancouver Police Department and all the men and women that worked on this investigation, I would say to the families how sorry we are all for your losses and because we did not catch this monster sooner." The inquiry issued 63 recommendations, including creation of a Greater Vancouver Regional Police Force to allow more effective, less fragmented police cooperation. It called for adequate funding for emergency shelters for women in the sex trade and for compensation for children of the missing women. Following the report, the Vancouver Police Department implemented several policy and procedural changes to its missing person investigations. The missing persons unit was made a regular part of the police department, and investigations are required to begin without delay. Family members are advised regularly and consulted before the release of information, and the case file is kept open until the missing person is located. The victim's children filed a civil lawsuit in May of 2013 against the Vancouver Police Department, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the Crown for failing to protect the victims, and they reached a settlement in March of 2014 where each of the children were compensated Canadian $50,000 without admission of liability. And that is the terrible story of Robert Pickton.
Well, I am glad he is in the Hooskow.
Yes.
In a federal prison in Canada, which is probably not pleasant.
Well, and he ended up disposing of most of his victims through that rendering plant, which is disgusting.
Yes.
In itself, not just from the pig farm, but but then he would also take things that he couldn't get rid of with the pigs, he would take to the rendering plant.
Yep.
So,
and which got rendered down into, I think they make products and stuff out of those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, some of those victims became some of those various products. Very sad, very terrible. Just a terrible, awful human being.
Yes. Awful.
So thanks for taking that journey with me.
Well, thank you for taking me on that journey. Thanks, sir.
I appreciate your time on that. As that takes us to the end of our recording week, and as always, you can find our information on nerdyandmurd.com, where you can find our contact information. If you wish to contact us, let us know things you want to hear, things you don't want to hear. You can also find information on the show itself, various links from where we got our information, plus pictures of the information we talked about. You can also find the link to our YouTube page.
That's right. We have a YouTube page where we have, for the nerdery part, a playlist for every single episode. So little videos, things that we're talking about, how-tos, things of that nature, in association with the nerdy part of the episode, as well as things we like and things we think are funny.
Yeah, awesome. Sig does a really good job on that. We appreciate all the work you do on that.
Well, thanks, sir. Hey, we need to give a shout out for Geoffrey too, for all the work that he does on the website, because all those links we give him, he puts them on there and gets them all up and running so people can see our stuff.
Yeah, I need to I got to get caught up on that. Yeah. You can also find our link to our merchandise, where if you wish to show off your Nerd and Murdy fandom, please do consider purchasing some merchandise. And you can also find the link to our Patreon, where if you wish to become a donator to the show, help us with our costs, because there are costs that are associated with keeping this show going. We appreciate each and every one of our patrons.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review anywhere you can. Really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for us. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.